This is the Board of County Commissioners Board work session. It is Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. It is 9:02 a.m. This is set to go until 10 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board, joining via Zoom. Vice Chair Time Minister in the boardroom, and Commissioner Gary Edwards joining via Zoom as well. In the boardroom, we also have County Manager.
Madam Chair, your connection seems to be a little bit off. You're breaking up.
County Manager Campbell. We have Prosecutor John Thunheim joining us for a presentation. The topic on today's agenda is prosecuting attorney. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, very well.
Did I break up? Hello?
You're breaking up. Maybe Commissioner Messer can help on.
Hello?
Maybe Commissioner Messer can help on.
Hello?
She lost her sound too.
Can you hear me?
You're really breaking up. Maybe Commissioner Messer can help on facilitating the meeting, if I may.
Okay, where did I cut off? Okay, where did I cut off?
Maybe can he start from the top?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's just introduce this again quickly. Board of County Commissioners work session for Wednesday, October 19th.
Hello, I'm gonna try to join via my other phone.
Okay.
9:04 a.m. Public can follow along on the county YouTube channel. The topic this morning is prosecuting attorney data dashboard briefing. We have the commissioners all present, either in person or by Zoom. County manager, assistant county manager, prosecuting attorney John Thunheim, and folks from his team. John, do you want to introduce your team?
Sure. Good morning. My name is John Thunheim, prosecuting attorney, and with me is Tara Stefalana, who's our community engagement specialist, and Wayne Graham, senior deputy prosecutor, and they are both involved in the data dashboard project.
Perfect. So I'll pass it straight to the prosecutor.
I think hopefully it's not going to take an hour, I don't think, but go ahead. Right. It's a good opportunity for the board to hear about this project.
Yeah, I doubt it'll take the full hour. And there's, I just want to say up front, I recognize that we're here in part because it's time to seek the waiver of the competitive bidding process. But that can, I understand, be done through the agenda setting and process. So, but that being said, I felt like this was still a good opportunity for me to come over and talk about the project overall, where we're at, and make sure I'm answering questions, because quite honestly, this is a very exciting project for our office. And to the extent that the commissioners are interacting with the community frequently, I want to make sure that you're able to talk about this and what's going on. And I've mentioned it briefly in a couple of other briefings, and I've always said more to come, that I would come over and give you more information, so here I am today. That's kind of the point of this. I will say also, in part, to also give the community the benefit of hearing a little bit more about this project in a little bit more detail. So the genesis of this project, and just kind of thumbnail history, goes back a few years ago, and really a pre-pandemic conversation that I started having with some community members in Thurston County around data and law and justice data, and how law and justice has typically been fairly weak in terms of how it keeps data, analyzes data, and so forth, which isn't uncommon. That is I think that's a law and justice gap throughout the country, and I've heard that from colleagues from across the country. Primarily because, as Commissioner Menzer knows, when we go to law school, we don't study statistics or data, right? We study cases, and that's what we do in our system is we're looking at cases. So this idea of starting to look at system performance on a much bigger level through data is actually very new to the law and justice system. It was through that conversation that I started thinking about this and was ultimately introduced to some folks at an organization called Measures for Justice, which is not a Thurston County organization, but they are a computer software data analysis technical assistance organization that basically specializes in helping prosecutors' offices look at their data, understand their data, analyze it, and more particularly in ways to communicate to the community that data, how to organize it and how to really put it out in this kind of dashboard way so that the community can really understand what's happening in the system. And so we had a few conversations about that. They had just been working with the district attorney's office in Yolo, California on a similar project. And so that got us thinking about what could that look like in Thurston County, and there were some conversations about it. And then about a year and a half ago, the federal government put out a request for proposals for a grant opportunity. This is a grant that happens periodically that's entitled Smart Prosecution. It's a grant specifically for prosecutors' offices to try to allow them to do innovative things beyond just handling their cases. And so as we were thinking about it, we decided maybe one of the possible innovations that might attract attention on this would be this idea of a data dashboard. But more than just creating the dashboard, actually creating a model of communicating to the community and engaging the community through data. And that was our concept that we put together. How to engage our community and communicate what's happening in criminal justice through data. We wrote a proposal and lo and behold, that was funded. So we received a Smart Prosecution grant, which if I recall is somewhere in the area of
284.
So just under $300,000 over a 2-year period, most of which pays for the technical assistance to get this out. We're not hiring any FTEs in the county on this, and really it's a partnership with this Measures for Justice. So once that grant was awarded, there were some other steps to go through because as you know, government generally requires a competitive process when we're looking for technical assistance kinds of services and bids. But in this case, the proposal was actually written with the partnership with Measures for Justice, with the intention that they would be the sole source or the provider, okay? And so that was contemplated in the proposal and therefore was actually kind of implicit in the acceptance of the grant. The federal government said, this is a good grant and we trust you and we trust Measures for Justice to work together on this. My words, not theirs, obviously, but that's the message that comes with the approval. So we still have to go through the formality of getting approval to do that because it's federal funding. That took a while, as you can imagine, to go through the federal process, but that was recently approved. We've received federal approval now for that partnership. And because it's federal money and not local money, we turned that over to our internal auditor and asked him to go through our county's policy, the process that we go through. And he has indicated that this project, because of that, is eligible for waiver of competitive bidding. Because we're actually not using county money for this, we're using federal money for this. And the nature of the work is such that, in the partnership that was contemplated when this grant was written, lends itself to that. So that's kind of the technical part of why we're here seeking the waiver. The project itself goes like this. We will actually pull together a community advisory board or committee, whatever title we want to give that. But it'll be a group of community members, and we'll gonna kind of very intentionally pull together a diverse group of people in terms of to try to get, I guess, a good representation, cross-section representation of the community. And they become our sounding board for this project. We get advice from them about what data should we be keeping? How should we look at it? What inferences can we draw from data? What inferences should we not draw from data? And then ultimately, what's the best way to display this data, to build a dashboard, an outward-facing dashboard, so that anybody in the community can go to this dashboard and be able to look at data and perhaps even do some data analysis on their own in an interactive way. And so that's the ultimate goal of the project, is to create this outward-facing data dashboard. And to do this, we'll also be building partnerships with other data sources. So we'll be using prosecutor data, and we have the capability of keeping pretty robust data because we touch every law enforcement agency in the county. We touch every court in the county with a couple of exceptions, and that's the municipal courts, two of the municipal courts. But outside of that, we have a lot of robust data that we can keep for ourselves. But we're also talking with law enforcement to build some partnerships there and possibly start including law enforcement data that wouldn't necessarily be something that we would normally track. And also the possibility of some court data as well. I know Leah's online, and we've talked about this project a little bit as a kind of a synergistic project with the criminal justice dashboard that she's looking at and working on with a data committee, a county data committee. We're a separate project. I don't want it to get confused, but I think that the work that we do might help inform the work that committee is doing as well. Ultimately, at the end of the day, my vision would be that we would have a common dashboard that would be available to the public to see what's going on and what they want to see. So I feel like that's really the overview of the project, and I'd love to answer questions or get feedback, have conversation, whatever you would like, and I'll say at some point you'll probably see a consent agenda item for the waiver of competitive bidding, and you'll have the background now to know why that's being submitted and what the background of that is.
Okay. Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Edwards, we'll start with you, sir.
I guess, John, my initial question is is this thing a color or a colorblind type of a study, or are you keeping track of metrics like racial issues and folks that commit crimes, if they fall in certain categories or not?
Yes, we will be keeping data on race, ethnicity, and other kind of demographic data. And that's actually one of the points, because as you know, one of the leading issues and concerns with criminal justice now is the disproportionality that exists in our criminal justice system. And from my viewpoint, I think this helps us really start to drill down on what areas of the system could we focus on to reduce risk of disparity? Now, I use two words there, and they're different words, and I mean different things when I say them, so I want to be clear. Disproportionality is a comparison of folks that are involved in the criminal justice system against the general population, right? So we all know that in the criminal justice system, the proportionality of people of color, the acronym now is BIPOC, those who are BIPOC, the disproportionality exists. There's a higher proportion of BIPOC individuals represented in criminal justice than in our general population. But to me, that doesn't give you the whole picture, because that's true in lots of institutions. And there are lots of things that are happening upstream that influence that figure, right? Education being a big one, for example. We know that education data directly correlates to criminal justice involvement. And we know that there is disproportionality in educational opportunities as well. Disparity, when I use that word, what I mean is that there's actually a decision point in the system where there's a risk that somebody of color, a BIPOC individual, might be treated differently than somebody who's not, right? That's disparity. So one of the purposes of really looking at this data is to help us identify decision points in the system where there might be a higher risk of disparity. And that's what I really want to focus in on, because that's something the criminal justice system can control, right? Education, other things out here upstream, we don't have any control over that, but we can control our own behavior in the system. So I'm sorry I went on a little bit there, Commissioner, but I think this is a really important point for all of you and for the community to understand, that one of the very purposes of doing this is to help us better understand what's going on in the system and why we see those numbers, those disproportionality numbers exist, and then do what we can do to try to minimize that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Messer, question, sir.
So I met with Measures for Justice way back. I might have met with them before you did. It was my first, I think, 6 months in office, and they were very impressive, I thought. So I think that's great. I'm very supportive of, whatever we need to do to get you guys to connect up. The e-prosecutor data system, I would imagine that's super helpful in terms of you guys connecting to what you're gonna need for this project.
Yeah, in fact, I probably wouldn't have gone forward with a proposal like this had I not also had e-prosecutor in the works at the time. Our ability to keep data in e-prosecutor is going to be much more robust, and there's no question about it. And we've already, our primary e-prosecutor person is already starting to go through and make sure that there are fields built into the system that we know right away, right off the bat, that we're going to want to track. And the nice thing about e-prosecutor is that it's customizable. So, and what I mean by that is, if we go to our community board, say, and they say, we really think that this data point would be helpful to track, and it's something we hadn't thought of before and isn't in e-prosecutor, we can actually go into e-prosecutor and create that data field ourselves without having to go back to the vendor or change something that's off the shelf, if you will. So, yeah, it's going to be an incredibly valuable tool.
Wait, Ty, on that note, though, everybody here knows, your data analysis is only as good as your inputs.
Yep.
And so what John's talking about there is we're not only working, obviously, with our community advisory board on identifying those target points, but the Measures for Justice folks already have a huge list of data points that they've gone through experience. And so one of the things that our office is doing is coordinating that into e-prosecutor right now. And then, like John said, we can continue to expand on it as different issues arise that are maybe just indicative or specific for our community. So that's a huge part of this project, and I agree with John. Without a prosecutor, there's no way we could have done that.
Cool, thank you. I bring that up, well, partly because I'm curious and partly because the commissioners are swimming in major software system upgrades and they're very expensive and, you know, you just almost can't get your arms around it. And so to hear the value, you know, that's not obvious, the connections that these systems can do to help the community for something that clearly is wanted, you know, this kind of access to information and analysis. So I just wanted to connect those dots.
Yeah.
And then I think similarly, and it's not so much a county project, but the law enforcement agencies, aren't they working on a coordinated data system? And I'd imagine that could plug into this potentially.
Right, the municipal jurisdictions are working on that. County's a little bit different, they're a little bit behind for some of those exact reasons, Commissioner, as far as the technology and the ability to have those programs going on. So as part of our advisory board, we have a commander level at every law enforcement agency because a lot of their information is gonna be what's gonna be out there. And so they're willing to coordinate with us, but right now, the one limitation, at least beginning, is we will only have felony information that'll be out there. Like John mentioned, there's some municipalities, there's actually 3, Olympia, Lacey, and Yelm, that we don't handle, and we don't have that court information, we don't have that prosecutor information. But all 3 of those jurisdictions are willing to work with us. We just kind of want to see how it's going to go. So at the beginning, it'll just be felony level offenses. As John said, we have all of that information, all of that data is available to us. But one of the big differences, I know, and when John mentioned it and Leah, so I know you guys we're talking about the county data warehouse, I think is what it's being called, Leah, and that's just getting going. The APPR project over at Pretrial Services also has a dashboard, and LEAD, I think some people were at the last LEAD meeting, they also have a dashboard. The biggest difference, and John talked about it, this dashboard's outward facing. Those other dashboards are more internal for informed decision making, where this one is going to be engaging with the community. I think that's a huge distinction, and I know that's part of what the county wants to do with the warehouse, I think at some point. But this is a good way, and I think John hit it on the head. We can get that ball really moving forward and to really complement, I think, what the county's envisioning from a warehouse standpoint, and also incorporating both the APPR and the LEAD information into the dashboard. But I would highly encourage everybody to go to that Yolo County website and look at their Commons board, is what it's called. If you want to get some idea of what this dashboard could potentially be, that's the same group that we're working with, and it's impressive. So just kind of as a follow-up on some of the stuff that John talked about.
Hey, Wayne, I appreciate you bringing that up, because that was in my notes, it was how it was going to be related to the APPR initiative, the LEAD dashboard, and related to the the subcommittee out of the Law and Justice that Leah is leading. I think it's an opportunity just to connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's inward or outward facing, I think we're dealing with the same sort of data. And I think it's going to create an opportunity as to how we can connect the dots, as using Commissioner Mensah's point. But also on the law enforcement, right now, we're going through the replacement of ADAMS, I believe. And there is an opportunity for us to go with a regional request for proposals to replace that system. Right now, we're going through the system analysis as to what will be the best vendor that can provide that. So that is going to create a forum or an area or a software where all the law enforcement agencies will build that information into a single system. You're right. I mean, the county's been a little bit behind but the replacement items at this point is going to be pivotal, I believe.
Absolutely.
To have the regional approach. So I appreciate you touching base on all the many different initiatives. But at some point, we need to, I believe, having a consolidated view as to how we can probably move forward.
I agree, and Romero, where I look at it is we've got the ability to get the ball rolling now with the Measures for Justice and the grant that John and our office was able to get. And then I think all those other programming can learn from the bumps and bruises that we're gonna have, at the same time feel how can they be collaborative and how can they incorporate and how can they take what we've learned and the information that we've got and use it for any specific purpose that those other agencies might be looking at, I think is part of the goal.
Maybe a deviation from that perspective, maybe as opposed to just learning from the successes you're gonna embark on this project, maybe allow the opportunity for all those programs to maybe tag along and learn from that along the way.
And that's what I meant, Romero. Obviously, we're gonna be collaborating with them all right now, and that'll be part of the learning process for all of us as we're going forward. Absolutely, and if I misspoke there, that was the intention.
What was that MOU, Romero? We had an MOU related to the justice coordinating with our.
Yeah, it's the replacement items. That's the system the
Okay,
sheriff's
so we
office
made that
has.
commitment, I thought we were making that
Yeah,
commitment
we
to
made
be
that commitment,
coordinated.
and in fact, you also just approved the additional request for proposals. So that is moving, and the replacement of items is timely because the local law enforcement, they need to upgrade as well.
Mhm.
So we're just gonna bring those two at the same level. Because you're right, I mean, we at the sheriff's office are a little bit lagging behind on the system itself as to how we collect the data.
That's really exciting for me to hear how quickly that ADAMS project is moving forward. You recall at a prior briefing, I think you mentioned that the board had approved moving forward to partner with the cities on that, and how excited I was about that. That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely, it's huge,
It's
and I
a
think
big
that's
deal.
gonna create a huge, good baseline, I think. Yeah. That's gonna make Leah's project a little bit easier.
Put a new toilet in. No, it sticks out. Oh, yeah.
My question is in regards, I asked about, or Wayne touched on the community advisory board part. And I have a question in regards to the timing on this, right? When we're talking about policy making, usually if we have a community advisory group, it's going to take a while. So do you have like a timeline for like to kind of start seeing some progress?
That was one of the things that we decided as a group that we could work on before the contract was signed. So I already have commitments. John has got a couple of community members from different areas that have agreed to be on the community advisory board. As I indicated, we've got individuals from each law enforcement agency. We have the tribe is on board. We have Hilo from the Hispanic population board. Carolina, you and I actually spoke of that a while back. We have the LGBTQ+ community on board and the African American community on board. We're looking at some of the housing and employers to get kind of round that out. And so I just want to make sure everybody is aware. What we did is we identified the groups that we thought would be important. I contacted the groups, then they nominated the person that they felt would be appropriate. So it wasn't like we were seeking a person, we were seeking a voice, and we allowed those particular groups to say, here's the person that we would like to be on that board. So we've already got commitments from all of those folks, but until there was work to start, until there was a contract signed, they're kind of just sitting on pause, but that's already been completed. It's not a complete group because you don't know who you don't know until you don't know them, kind of a thing. So once we start getting going, then synergistically, there'll be some people, well, what about this agency? What about that agency? John may have some other input on some folks. And so we'll be adding to it as we go, but that's our base right now that we already have ready to go. It's just push play. We're just waiting for the pause to come off from the contract standpoint. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. Any additional questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
What if this all works out as you're hoping? What are going to be the ongoing costs after the grant runs out? And will there be also ongoing licensing issues with the software and such?
I think the answer is yes, there may be some ongoing costs associated with, and I don't think we know the exact answer to that, but I'll let Wayne and Tara chime in on that as well. Measures for Justice, in the initial part during this contracting part, will host and do all the software development, and there, I think, will be a license cost that goes with that. And then as we move into maintenance phase, the development's all done, the development's all paid for. And I expect there will be some licensing costs going on. We're actually kind of hoping though that we can actually do a lot of the maintenance of it in-house in terms of somebody who can manage the day-to-day part of the dashboard. And so really what we would be, our ongoing cost is more associated with the license for the software. Now, am I right or?
That's
Okay.
pretty darn close.
Okay.
Yeah, so the development of the data dashboard and the first year of maintenance, once the site goes live, so we're guessing it's probably 6 to 9 months to actually get it to the go live point. And so from there, from say November 1st through that point, and then the 12 months following our go live date, that cost is $250,000, and that covers all of that. It covers the development and the first year of maintenance. And the second year of maintenance will be $25,000, and so that will, take us through the rest of the grant period. And that leaves us with about $9,000 of balance after that in the grant. And that would either be used to cover things that are out, like any needs that arise that are outside the current scope of work. Or if no such needs arise, that would just be applied to our third year of maintenance. And I did have a couple of discussions about this with our ongoing maintenance costs, assuming that might be a question you have. So our firstly, we would just actually assess the project before we would evaluate the project to see if it's accomplished the goals we intended it to. If we have, leadership and community buy-in to continue on. And assuming those things are true, we would first seek grant funding. And so we're thinking, the burn grant that we have right now, that's an annual allocation grant, and that would probably cover the majority, if not fully, that cost going forward. But then, our second option would be to just see how we can absorb it into our current budget.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I'll kind of side on that. Obviously, there's gonna be some maintenance costs associated with anything like this. I mean, and obviously I think that's why you asked. But we're hoping over the next 2 years, and like what Romero was talking about, coordinating with all these other interested parties to see about getting that information out there. Hopefully, we're able to disperse some of those costs. But the bigger component for my purposes is that non-felony data. That was not part of our original grant, so it's not part of this. If we want to explore and expand into non-felony data, that's going to take a little bit different effort. So I just want to make sure going forward, I think that's as valuable as anything. And so again, hopefully in the next year and a half, we can show the merit of what this is, and then hopefully start looking at what else it could be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Edwards asked the right question, a good question, because my request is going to be when you submit the AIS, they perhaps outline the financial strategies on the ongoing. Because when we present an item to the board, we need to make sure they understand that it's not just about this opportunity to utilize this grant, but also perhaps what is the commitment that perhaps board will have to address in the long term. And if it's a grant, first, that's great. In the long term, but it's a general fund help because that's general fund, the only option that we have. And if it's part of your strategy to find a way as to how you can commit it within your allocation, that's great. But also, all that I believe needs to be discussed in the AIS.
So the prosecutor's office submitted the application requesting approval to apply for a grant. That was one of the conditions of acceptance, is that there would not be an ongoing cost commitment from the board. So that's part of that.
But I will be good to have that on the AIS for the board to consider.
Okay. John, anything else?
No, I think that's it, unless you have any other questions. I just want to make sure you feel like you've got a good enough understanding of what we're doing and can talk about it in the community or answer questions. And certainly feel free if people are asking you questions that are beyond what you know about it, send them my way. Because we definitely want the community to understand what we're doing here. This is all about community engagement. This whole point of this grant is about that.
Thank you.
Great, I knew about pieces of this, but I didn't know the whole community advisory group piece, and so that's an excellent piece for me to know as I'm talking to the community about it.
Great.
Yeah, and that, I highlighted, you know, it's about making data-driven decisions and conversations. That's what John's talking about with that engagement aspect of it. And this just gets that moving and not having agenda-driven conversations, but data-driven conversations which are productive. So that's, I know, our goal.
To give the floor to Leah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. Leah, anything you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. I really appreciate Wayne and John, both of you kind of separating the differences between the data warehouse subcommittee that we have going through the Law and Justice Council as well as this project. But I'm very excited. I think that this is going to be a wonderful asset for the community. I apologize for the baby. But I'm very excited and I'm happy to support this project however I can moving forward.
Don't apologize for the baby.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Whitney, you'd like to add anything?
Okay, it is 9:38 p.m. AM. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.